Welcome to Lipstick, Laughs and Leadership, the podcast where we talk real leadership without the corporate BS.
We're Jodie and Emma, and this is a space for honest, human conversations about confidence, influence, well-being, and what it really takes to lead in today's world.
This podcast is for women who are capable, ambitious and thoughtful, but who might sometimes feel tired, stretched, or quietly question whether there's another way to do leadership.
There's no jargon here, no rigid rules, and certainly no pretending. Just lived experience, straight talk, laughter, and leadership that actually feels good on the inside.
So grab a cuppa, get yourself comfortable,
and welcome to the sofa. Welcome back to Lipstick, Laughs and Leadership. We hope you enjoyed episode 1. If you haven't listened to it already, head on back there and do so. But we're back with episode 2. And the topic of discussion for this episode is, what even is leadership anymore?
It's a big one.
It is a big one. It feels like times are a-changing.
Yeah,
definitely.
Absolutely.
And so we thought we would get some clarity on what we even mean by leadership these days. So yeah, we're going to bob around a few thoughts on that, and you can get involved in the conversation too. But I want to start this one with a bit of a quote. It's quite a punchy quote that often takes people back a little bit, makes them go, oh, what? But you know, I think there's a phrase that says, "People don't leave jobs; people leave leaders." Discuss.
Yes, a very interesting. It's been around for a while, hasn't it, that quote? And but I think it's still very pertinent today, and I definitely resonate with that. I know in the past I've definitely left the leaders and not a job, and there's one in particular that I'm thinking about, and I'll probably share some examples of that.
We love a good story.
Yeah, I think the first word that comes to mind with that is a disalignment of morals. But yeah, like I said, we'll definitely unpick that and get into it. But yeah, I think, you know, it is unfortunate these days that you do have people that make that decision to leave. They might love the job, but yeah, it's the leader that's getting in the way. And there's a Simon Sinek story actually based on has just come to mind there.
Big fan.
Yeah, because I think when you've got somebody that's underperforming in their role, it can be so easy to point the finger. But if I had £1 for every time I said, when you point the finger, there's often 3 pointing back, and you can feel like you've got someone in your team that's not performing. And it's because of them. But the story from Simon Sinek is it kind of explains how you can take exactly the same person and put them in a different environment where they're led well, and you can see that they perform a lot better. I think there's a big element of psychological safety that comes in here, which again, I think that is to be left for a whole episode of its own.
Hot topic though now, isn't it?
But the story goes, so Simon Sinek went to 2 hotels in space of a couple of weeks in America. One of them was a 4 Seasons. I forget what the other one was.
Caesar's Palace.
Oh, Caesar's Palace.
I know the story.
Yeah, good. And he was checking in at the hotel. There was a porter there. I had a smile on his face. Was like doing a really good job of the, you know, service of what a porter does. And looked like he was really enjoying his job. Was calling Simon Sinek. We checked with him first, but calling him by his first name, and just everything that you would expect from a happy porter doing their job,
going over and above, offering to do other things.
Yeah, that's it. And
having personal chat.
Yeah, that's it. Great customer experience. And that stuck in Simon Sinek's mind. A couple of weeks later, he's at the different hotel. Do you know which way round they are? Because I always forget.
So I think 4 Seasons was the good one, and
right.
Caesar's
so 4
Palace
Seasons was the first one.
It's not. I think I'm going to have to double check
that.
So check the show notes after, just in case. I might have been correction.
And yeah, so let's say the second one was Caesar's Palace. So he goes there and he's being served by a porter again, you know, doing kind of same things, helping him to check in. But this time he didn't have a smile on his face. He had his head down, wasn't really speaking to Simon Sinek, and wasn't doing the above and beyond and customer experience part. And Simon Sinek suddenly realised it was the same porter from a couple of weeks ago, and kind of said to him, I hope you don't mind me saying, but did I see you in the other hotel a couple of weeks ago? And are you okay? Because you were completely different. And he went on to say, well, he actually works in both hotels, and he's quite embarrassed to start with, as you can imagine, like being caught out. But the moral of the story, and the purpose for me mentioning it, is because he said, well, actually, I really like working in the other hotel. People know my name. I'm not treated as just a porter. My manager, values me, and I feel
and helps me.
and helps me, and actually, feel really valued as an employee there. And people that I work with say hello to me down the corridor, etc. He said, whereas actually this job, is the complete opposite. I don't think anybody knows my name. I barely see my manager. Like my manager doesn't help me.
Yeah, he picks holes in what I do. He's always looking for things that I'm doing wrong.
Yeah. And so, like Simon Sinek said at the end of it, and I said at the beginning, is it just goes to show that you can take one person that are led completely different by someone different, and they perform so much better. So yeah. I think it links in nicely with that quote.
I think also, the one thing that often gets overlooked, and we'll get into, how we define leadership exactly, and especially what it means for the women we work with, is that obviously we always end up talking about employee engagement in organisations. And it makes me laugh, actually. Like loads of businesses do an annual employee engagement survey, right?
Yeah.
Once a year, it trots around, doesn't it? And, in the days leading up to the engagement survey, in a lot of places, I see everybody ramp it up, often with material things. It's the classic, isn't it? Let's get pizza and donuts in for everybody. Let's butter them up,
right?
So they give us a good score in the employee engagement survey. And I think, it's old research now, but the Corporate Leadership Council that did the original research on what engagement levers really were, loads of them. But, fundamentally, you're trying to get down to two key types of commitment, right? From people, which Simon Sinek's story shows. You're wanting people to have rational commitment to an organisation. It makes sense for me to work here. And then you want people to have emotional commitment, which is the bit that makes people show up 10% more. Give that discretionary effort. And, fundamentally what that research demonstrates is, whilst there are a number of factors that influence employee engagement, there are a number of levers. I think there's about 56, if I remember rightly. The line manager is the single biggest filter. So it's almost like the line manager is a gateway.
Yeah.
If you're watching on YouTube, I'm doing hand signals. If you're listening on Spotify or somewhere else, then you can't see me. But, it's almost like that. You can have all of those other levers in place, but if the line manager's shit, none of them are getting through. It's like a lock on a canal.
Yeah.
But, if you've got a great line manager, then those lock gates are open and all the other levers can do their thing.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? It's the maker or breaker.
Yeah, I totally get what you mean there.
So, it literally underpins that story of performance. It's not just how nice you are to people. It is fundamentally about employee engagement.
It is, absolutely. And what you just said there about those levers is, in terms of the line manager being key.
Yeah.
There was an organisation I worked at once, and we were losing 750 people a month. And as you can imagine, to any organisation, that's a lot of people to lose each month. And we were just about scraping by, managing to recruit 500 a month to replace them. So common sense tells you you're always going to be in a deficit there. When I joined the organisation, nobody was doing any exit interviews to find out why these people were leaving, which I just thought was insane. When you think about the amount of money it was costing to lose, re-recruit, retrain, etc., etc. So I asked the customer service department actually to do me a little experiment and call all the people that had left in the last 3 months. Now, I won't bore you with all the stats, but I got the stat that I was looking for, that I had a feeling was going to be high.
Yeah.
82% of them said that they left because of how they were treated by the manager. And,
just goes to show, doesn't it? Just goes to show.
Absolutely.
So I guess, the moral of that bunch of stories is don't underestimate the power that you hold as a leader, But I suppose, we've got to get clear on what we really mean by leadership, because I don't know about you. I think it's changed a lot in, I want to say, the last decade.
That,
And there's always that age-old debate or discussion around manager versus leader. So I think maybe we should go there a bit.
Yeah, and this is always a good place I like to start, actually, when we talk about this topic, because I think sometimes we can get hung up on words and labels, and and manager and leader, or management and leadership, are two words that we use interchangeably and quite often together. But how often have you kind of sat back and thought about, well, what is the difference between the two? So I know what I normally say. If someone was to give me one word to describe either, but I'm keen to know.
Oh, she's going to put me on the spot now. She hasn't prepped me for this one. She hasn't prepped me. I've got to do one word.
One word for a manager, one word for a leader.
Manager, tasks.
Yeah, that's exactly my word.
Leader, if I can only have one word, it's got to be people.
Yeah.
Are they the same as yours?
Yeah.
No way.
I honestly didn't.
Not rehearsed. Not rehearsed. Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Boom.
Because we know what we're talking about, don't we? And it makes sense. That's why we do this podcast, because we think
I always say you manage stuff, you lead people. I was going to say stuff.
Yeah.
But I thought, no, we'll do tasks.
Well, that's it, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's and that just makes it clear, really, is when you've got your manager hat on. And I say hat because what I often say to people when I do an exercise like this is we write a list of what does a manager do, what does a leader do, and so many groups often talk about it as though that's one person and then that's another. Yeah, and it can't be the same.
Or you get given one of the two job titles. Are you a manager or are you a leader?
Exactly.
Where some of us have got the word manager on our badge.
Yeah, so we say, oh, well, I'm a manager.
And others have got leader.
Yeah. So we get hung up on job titles. Job titles aren't important. It's about what you're actually doing day to day. That's the key thing. And what a lot of people will say when I say, so are you a manager or are you a leader, looking at both those lists? Unfortunately, a lot of people say, I get actually dragged into being the manager most of the time, but I know that I should be doing some of this.
Yeah.
So I like to see them as hats.
And whether you've got manager or leader in your job title, if you are trying to get stuff done and you've got people in your team, then you're doing both.
Yeah.
Let go of what the job title says.
Absolutely, you need to be doing both.
You need to be doing both.
But the key, but what I find is a lot, and I suppose we'll get into this in the podcast where we talk about, well, so what is a lead? What does a leader do, and what does that look like? But I like to think of them as hats, and they are hats that you need to put on interchangeably, but you need to have the emotional and contextual intelligence to know, when do I need to have my manager hat on and when do I need to have my leader hat on. But what I often see, and if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see me doing it, but if you're listening, I'm kind of trying to do animation of a hat. But what it is that, so you've got your hat, it's like people have taken the manager hat, got some super glue, put that all on the inside of the manager hat, stuck it on, and they can't get it off, and they've just thrown the leadership one out the window somewhere, and it's like, that's gone, I've lost it.
It blew away in the wind.
Now, what that means is that, going back to those two words, is that what a lot of people are doing is spending all day just getting through the day, focusing on the tasks that are in front of them, firefighting, the day-to-day stuff.
Well, because that stuff's tangible. It has a right and a wrong answer usually. It's either done or it's not done. You can tick it off a list, and we all love a list. Yeah. Whereas the people stuff, not as tangible, not as clear-cut about whether it's finished, it's done, or it's dusted.
Yeah.
And it doesn't comply very well with your tick list, does it?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think some of the reason for this is, if you listen to our first episode on confidence, and if you didn't, go back and listen to it.
Yeah.
We talked about comfort zones, and I think what I often find is managers have been sometimes thrown into a role. They've been the best salesperson or the best person in the team and gone, okay, how can we keep them engaged? Let's promote them. And so they've been used to doing the task, coming in every day to work, me, myself, and I don't have anybody to think about. And that's what you become comfortable with. So then when you throw a team into the mix, a lot of people are like, oh, right, so what do we do now? We've got these people. What do I do with them? And I think
I get them to do stuff.
Get them to do stuff. Exactly.
Do the stuff that I used to do, and I'll tell you how to do it because I know how to do it really well.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's a bit flippant of me.
So yeah, and I think another side of that is time. And I think you were saying about leadership's change over the last decade. I think also we've seen a shift in the last, probably 5 years since, dare I say, the C-COVID word, where more managers are managing remotely. And so your tasks are in front of you. Like you said, they're tangible. They're there in front of you, your emails, trying to get through
reports, spreadsheets, workflows.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you can't see your team, it's like out of sight, out of mind almost. So I think if you're managing remotely, it's a whole different consciousness that you need to think about and remember your team is still there.
Definitely. So for this particular episode, we said it was what even is leadership anymore. So now that we've done that clarity piece, let's put the manager bit down. We'll talk about that another day. Let's spend a bit of time in this episode talking specifically about leadership, and what is good and bad leadership. What does it even look like? Because it's one of those words, isn't it? It's become a word that gets used all of the time. Yet it's almost like I'm sure that a more common a word or phrase is, the less likely we are to agree on a common meaning for it. So sometimes I play a game of 20 words, word association. So we'll say, right, the word is leadership. Everybody, you've got 60 seconds to write down as many words as you can that you associate with the word leadership. We all do that. Then we say, right, we all get a point for every word that we've all written down.
Okay.
And often you never score more than 2.
Oh, wow.
Even with things like service or customer, it doesn't matter so leadership will be the same. Is that quite often, we don't write the same words and we all think it's the same thing, but we don't. So I don't know, where do we start with that? Where's the starting point for leader? We said it's about people. It's definitely about people, and it's changed a lot over the years because I do a lot of work in the military as well as in very fresh, funky, new businesses. And I think that for me paints a really big contrast from one to the other. Right. Because, when you think of traditional leadership, it's really easy to picture like that command and control. The leader is at the front. And the leader knows where we're going. And the leader knows how to get there, and their job is to motivate and inspire everybody to follow them. Would that be fair? I don't know. Whereas, and I think that's still to a degree, that still exists in a military context. Particularly in an operational sense, and it works. I'm not disputing that. When the risks that high and there's lives at stake and you're at war, that kind of does still work. I advocate for that. But when we're running a business, a corporate business, and we're sat in offices around desks or at home remotely, I don't think that's necessary anymore. So I think one of the, baseline shifts in leadership it's no longer about command and control. It's not about being at the top, of hierarchy or being at the front. In fact, I think some of the best leaders lead either from within or even sometimes at the back. And there's a whole different skill set to being able to do front, middle, back. I don't know, I'm waffling.
No, it's interesting because it's something that I I've thought about recently with my walking group. So in the intro to the podcast, I mentioned that I have a local walking group. So I lead the walks. And something that I often do, and it's not because I'm lazy and I'm slow at walking, but I'm often at the back. Because when I'm at the back, I know that there isn't anybody trailing behind me and left on their own. I know that I can see everybody on the walk and check that they're okay. And people have a rough idea of where we're going. And what often happens is the people that are walking at the front, whenever we get to like a junction where we could go one way or the other, they do turn around to me for a bit of a sense check and go, going that way or that way. Sometimes I'll go, if I've not really got a defined route and there are two ways, I just go whichever way you want
choose.
To go. But sometimes when I know there's a particular route and it's the miles that we've said we're going to do, I'll say, oh, it's that way, but I just give them a nudge in the right direction. But other than that, they're adults, they can walk themselves. I don't need to support them. And I suppose it's a good analogy for what you're saying there is, when you are at the back, you kind of you're observing the team, and I think that's sometimes where we can get stuck in doing the task sometimes, because we forget actually it's about being a leader is about achieving the objectives that you've got in your team through others, not through you.
I think that has got to be a core foundation. However else you want to describe leadership, it's got to have that in it. Maybe someone will dispute that and say something different. I'm interested if that's the case. But it feels like that is a dead cert. You can't drag people along. And actually it feels like now we need to be spending more of our time in a leadership space than a management space.
I think what it also does is it gives people autonomy, and I think more so now than ever people want autonomy in their roles. And so when you are leading from the front and you're directing and telling, that's not giving people autonomy to think for themselves, to empower them. I think in my experience I've seen a lot of leaders, when we talk about the difference between bad and good, that they probably wouldn't admit it, but their egos maybe got the better of them, and they actually like it secretly when they have a day off and the team falls apart. They want that to happen almost
because they're needed,
because they feel that, well, if my team can operate when I'm not there, well, what
value do I add? So it's tied up intrinsically in your self-worth, isn't it? I think it was just as you're talking about autonomy, familiar with Dan Pink? And he did a lot around the science of motivation, which fundamentally, sits in this space. How do we kind of mobilize people towards a vision, a direction? And it was autonomy, mastery and purpose. Is that right?
3 circles that overlap. And
a
Venn drive in the middle.
Or we might get the hula hoops out again.
We love a Venn
all the
diagram.
Things we can draw with our hula hoops. Autonomy, mastery and purpose. So autonomy being that I get to make decisions, mastery being that I do get to grow, I get to hone my skill and get shit at something, become an expert in it, and purpose being that I'm contributing to something worthwhile. I have meaning and value in the work that I do every day, and I think that is a massive part of being a great leader.
Oh, it is, definitely. And there's an old story, some of you may have heard it, that I like to tell about purpose, which is when JFK visited NASA's head office for the first time, and there was a janitor mopping the floor, and he walked in, he said, "Hi, my name's John Kennedy, I'm President of the United States. What do you do around here?" Now, when I ask most people, what do you think he said? I know you've heard the story, so I'll ask you.
I'll play along.
What do you think? What do most people say to that question? What do you think the janitor's response was?
I clean the toilets.
I clean the toilets. Or do you know what? A lot of people use the word just. Did he say, I'm just a cleaner?
Just a cleaner.
So the first thing I say to that is nobody is just anything, and we need to remind our teams of that. But he didn't say any of that. He actually said, I'm helping to put a man on the moon. And a lot of times I say that in a room, people go, "Oh, I've just got goosebumps," because that's true purpose. That janitor obviously had a great leader that reminded him of why he got out of bed in the morning, why he did what he did, and
the part he plays.
And it doesn't matter if that part that you play is you going to the moon or you're mopping the floors at HQ. everybody is just as important as each other. And so I think we can lose sight of that. It's time and time again when I ask a group of leaders, what is your organization's vision, mission, purpose, values, if we want to go down that route as well. If you've been on any of my programs, you will know I always ask this question, but so many of them can't answer it and don't know. And it's like, well, if you don't know, I'm going to guess that your team don't know.
So they can't connect to it?
No.
So I think there's some baseline things there for sure. When I look at how leadership has moved on, and especially because we are thankfully now starting to see the number of women and female leaders increase in the workplace, that we bring a different quality to the table. So we'll do separate episodes, particularly around like masculine and feminine energy and how that can affect leadership. We'll get to that a little bit later in the season, but I think I'm a proper fangirl of Brené Brown.
Me too.
Girl crush.
Yeah.
If you don't know about her, if you're not followed her, I highly recommend you go check her out. But I think that's now starting to bring some very new traits and qualities and characteristics to the table that are more feminine energy led. So notice I'm not saying they're men or women here, because that's interchangeable. We'll do that in another episode. But it's the things like collaboration. It's the things like authenticity, which I know has probably become a really annoying buzzword, but that's because we've not really got under the skin of how do you bring that. You talked in the last episode about having the courage, having courage to be a bit different, to take a bit more of a risk, to when I say expose yourself, I don't mean like that. I mean interpersonally. Mrs. Don't do that. A lot of these things are more feminine energy traits. Having the humility to say, I don't know, I've made a mistake. They have actually become really inspiring leadership traits. To have the vulnerability and humility as a human being. It got to a point, it probably still is in a lot of organizations I go into, where it almost feels like we've completely lost humanity. Feels like sometimes you go in, when you walk through a revolving door, feels like you go through that revolving door and you strip yourself of any kind of individuality and you come out the other side like a robot. Where people don't speak their mind, they don't have opinions, they toe the corporate line. And I just feel like, oh God, we leave our emotion at the door. Like, I'm a big advocate for bringing emotion back to the workplace, and I think leadership but with emotional intelligence, and again, a whole new episode on emotional intelligence, is the way to do that. Not that we all start crying and shouting in each other's face and going batshit at work. But, just sharing that ounce of vulnerability is important, isn't it? And sharing that, like you said, that human side. And and what I was thinking when you were saying there is, when you go through that revolving door, if you're sitting on the fence, or if you feel like you can't speak up and share ideas, that really can be damaging for an organization, because it stunts creativity. I saw some research that said the top skill that was required in jobs last year was creativity, but only 33% of people said that they were given the time to be creative at work. So there's some disconnect there. Well, and there's another thing that goes into that I notice massively is that, I've recently done some development in the space of neuroscience, and that's been massively eye-opening. I ended up doing it as a result of my own health journey through burnout. I really wanted to understand what was going on in my noggin, because I find that I can deal with myself better when I understand chemically what's happening and physically what's going on in my body. Anyway, back to the point. The whole thing from a kind of neuroscience perspective that was an eye-opener for me is that leadership and work is very left-brained. So obviously we've got two sides of the brain, two hemispheres, left hemisphere, right hemisphere. Left hemisphere is, very logic, all about, the rational side of us, the the right and wrong, the yes, no, the black and white, binary, you know, it likes zeros and ones, whereas our right brain is where our creativity sits and likes rhythm and music and colour and, you know, shape and, you know, all of those kinds of things. But because work has typically been so left brain, we're not tapping into our right brain as much. Now, because I'm left-handed, I'm right brain dominant. So, you know, I find that suffocates me because I need to bring a lot more right brain to my work. I'm lucky. I've created a work life that allows me to kind of do that. My husband says I work in the glitter and glue team or the colouring in team, for fuck's sake. You know, I do not. We do a lot more than glitter and glue and colouring in, although I am quite partial to a little bit of that if I can do it. But, you know, my point is, yes, right brain for creativity, but it's also, you know, because we work in a learning era space right now, i.e. we're paid to solve problems, we need people to do whole brain at work. It's getting a bit deep there. We said we'd go deep sometimes, right? But which means we need both hemispheres of the brain to be communicating with each other to solve these problems, whole brain learning. But if we're only activating one half of it, we're never going to get whole brain learning, are we?
No. And when I say to people, you know, when do you feel you're most creative? Nobody ever says when I've got back-to-back Teams calls or where I've got 748 emails in my inbox I need to deal with that day. That just doesn't happen. It tends to be when you are in a more relaxed mindset. You know, and I first realized this years ago when when I worked before having my business. I very, very rarely took a day off sick, but I had 3 days off where I had the flu really bad. Sat at home, obviously feeling ill and sorry for myself, but all the projects I was working on at work, loads of ideas kept coming to my mind. I ended up having to get pen and paper and was like, wow, all these ideas are coming to my mind. And I realised it's because even though I was ill, I was not expected to answer my phone, didn't have any meetings, any emails, but I was still almost feeling probably guilty because I was having time off work, so still maybe in a work mindset, but I was more creative.
You had the capacity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I realised after that we don't create enough time, and creativity takes time. You know, if you as a leader and having a meeting with your team, you want them to come up with ideas, you know, this is the way that the meeting will probably pan out, is we'll go, right, we've got a problem, we need to come up with a solution, who's got some ideas? And we probably listen to one or two most vocal people in the room go, okay, great idea, all right, let's move on to the next agenda, or all right, I've got another meeting to go to now. Let's go with that idea. Is it the best, most creative idea? Probably not. Have we left other people in the room who might have an idea and we've not asked them?
Especially
Probably.
If they're not the most vocal in the group. If they're more of a reflector, their learning style is a little bit different. Again, another episode on that, I reckon.
Yeah, definitely.
All those things, all of those things. So I just, leadership is shifting, and the requirements, the skill set, the behaviours that are important to be successful are definitely broadening out and becoming a little more feminine in that sense, and that's nothing but a good thing for sure.
And go back to what you're saying about feminine, another word that came to mind before when you were saying about courage and humility and things like that is nurturing. And I think that comes from a feminine energy, whether you are a man or a woman. I think that's what people like to see in their leader, is that you've got a leader that nurtures you, that cares about you as a person and not just
your output,
or job title, or, you know, people used to say a number. I don't think we go with payroll numbers these days, but that's kind of, you know, that's the old school way of managing people, isn't it? That I've just got a number that's working for me. As much as we need to have those human skills with our people in our team, they also need to see that you're a human as well. And I think, you know, we're going to do a podcast at some point on resilience and well-being and things like that. But I think what you often see when we think we need to be resilient as a leader is that means putting a suit of armor on. being robotic, not showing that you're ever struggling yourself. And again, it comes back to that vulnerability, and it sets your team up for unrealistic expectations when you do that. And if you're wondering why your team don't find you approachable, then that's maybe one thing to look at is, have you found yourself using that phrase of, you've got to be swan-like as a leader, calm and collected on the surface, but paddling like hell underneath. And don't get me wrong, there's elements of time where you need to do that, but there's elements of that where you need to know.
Yeah, it's not a permanent style, is it?
No.
You might need to switch it on to get you through a particularly tricky time, and then you switch it back off again.
Yeah.
So, before we wrap this episode up, let's share a few tales.
Okay.
Maybe who shaped you from a leadership perspective, whether for better or for worse.
Yeah.
What springs to mind?
Oh, I could think of a bit of both.
My negativity bias is finding all the shit ones first.
Yeah,
so I don't know about
I was
you.
just about to say mine was.
Thinking, that one was crap. That one was crap. That was crap. I know I was probably crap myself.
No, I was just thinking of that, and I was just about to say I'll start with the good ones. And I always come back to this time and time again. And I was just about to say before you said that, actually, is that I haven't even gotten to my first top tip as a leader to focus. Well, I say first. Yeah, we'll go with the first, is listening. And when I think about the best leaders that I had, and I think, what made them a great leader? I always come back to the fact that when you're having a conversation with them, whether it was work related or personal, you felt like they were genuinely listening to you, and you knew how busy they were. And probably one of the best leaders I had wasn't even my direct line manager. He was the manager above my manager. So he didn't really need to, well, I'll say not make an effort, but he wasn't my line manager.
It wasn't his job.
No.
He wasn't responsible for you.
He was the head of the department. I knew how busy he was. And whenever he had a chat with me, he didn't really ask me about work because that was my line manager's job. It was more about me as a person. He remembered stuff that we talked about last time I had a chat with him. And he made you feel in that moment, and I always do this when I talk about leaders that listen, because he made you feel that nothing outside of this conversation mattered. It was just me and him in that conversation. And in that moment, even more important than his wife and kids, because it was we were in that moment having that conversation, and pretty much everybody in the team said that he made them feel like that. So yeah, I'll always come back down to listening and having a genuine care for you as a person. So I could talk about lots of different things, which I'm sure will come out in some of the other podcasts about great leaders, but that's my key one. I think bad leaders, leaders that I've said before right at the beginning of this one, morals aren't aligned. And I don't want to go into too much detail, but there was one leader that I definitely decided to start looking for another job when I knew that they had done something that wasn't right, to somebody that had worked for them for a long time. And immediately my thought was, well, if they can do that to that person, what's to say that they can't do that to me? I'd only been working with them for a couple of years.
The way you do anything is the way you do everything.
Absolutely. And I think in fact, rather than just honing in on a couple of specific leaders, I would say, because I've said listening for good, I would say a lack of trust. And very quickly, I always talk about ABCD around the model of trust. And well, you could probably tie this in with what has made great leaders for me, and I have seen, and what's made bad ones. A is ability. So to be able to see that they've got the ability to do their job, to lead a team, know what they're talking about. B is believable. That's about acting with integrity, saying what they doing what they say they're going to do. And when they do say something, you believe it, so you have that trust in them. C is connected, and it goes back to what I was just saying before, leaders that are connected to actually the person. Do they know the name of your pet? your partner, where you like to go on holiday, maybe what you like to do at the weekend. And then D is dependable. So when, you know, things go wrong, when the shit hits the fan, do you know that you can get together as a team and or you can go to that manager, and it's not a blame game culture. It's okay, we'll deal with that together as a team, and you can depend on each other.
Yeah.
So I think that probably ties in nicely.
The ABCs with a D.
Yeah. Of trust. Yeah. So
nice.
Trust, I think is really important. How about yourself?
And listening for you. I think the listening thing is a key. And you know what? I think listening is the hardest skill on the planet. Dead easy to say, but what most people do is they hear. They don't really listen.
Yeah.
So I do think it's a fundamental leadership skill, because when you really listen, what it does for somebody is it validates them, and they feel seen, heard, and acknowledged for whatever it is going on for them and they're experiencing. You don't have to agree with somebody, you can still validate them in that sense, I think. So yeah, wholeheartedly get that. I think for me, I've had some shocking experiences of being led, to the point where there was a point in my life where I didn't go to work for 3 months and nobody noticed.
Wow, 3 months?
Yeah.
No one noticed?
No one noticed, because I didn't have an actual line manager.
Right. Wow.
And so we were being babysat by somebody who was way too busy. And you know what? Probably a load of people would be like, that's mega, but it wasn't. It was soul destroying, because I felt like I had no worth whatsoever. There was no point in me having a job, because clearly nobody missed me.
Yeah.
So that wasn't great.
At that.
I know. I've also had narcissistic leaders. That would do unbelievable things, so self-centered, gaslight the hell out of you, all in a quest for them to feel good about themselves. So their ego was just so big. For me, being a great leader, the one quality I would pick is belief.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. This is a non-work-based person. And it was my granddad.
Right.
Now, my granddad, actually wasn't my actual granddad, because my dad was adopted.
Okay.
So, not even flesh and blood. But he was the one man who believed in me, whatever. I could achieve anything I set my mind to.
Yeah.
You know what? And because of that, I often did. So I think having somebody who truly believes in you.
Yes.
Can just transform your life, right? But also somebody who believes in the art of the possible. So they're not like, oh, well, this isn't going to work, is it? Sometimes a problem can be a massive problem.
Yeah.
But somebody who says, do you know what? There is an answer, and there'll be more than one answer. We just haven't found it yet. That lights me up.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? To think, right, well, let's go digging. Let's see what we can find. But, if we're like, oh, well, we're fucking stumped, aren't we?
Yeah.
Great. So I think belief in a number of different guises is hugely important.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And, but from a bad leadership perspective, it's got to be about self-centeredness.
Yes.
And ego. Who are you in this for? Because I believe that leadership needs to come from a place of altruism, fundamentally, not through a place of self-service. If you're selfish as a leader, it's fucked.
Yeah.
And I'll just leave it on that one.
No, I think that's really important, because that could start so many different conversations around ego, I think.
Yeah. And we will over time.
And I think it links in a little bit with the belief, because sometimes your manager might believe in you, but they don't show it because they don't want you to be better than them. So that's a good one.
Who knows? So on that note, I think that gives us something really deep to carry on, mulling over, I guess, let it simmer, see what you think. We'd love to know what you think leadership is all about these days. What even is leadership anymore, as far as you're concerned? We'd love to carry on the conversation, so do share. Wherever you're watching this, if you can leave a comment below, go ahead and do so, or drop us a message on any of our social channels. We always love to connect with you. So for now, we'll leave you to muse some more on what leadership might mean.
Absolutely. I feel like we've just scratched the surface. So we've got so much more that we can share with you, and we will do on our future episodes. So like Jodie said, follow our podcast, like and subscribe if you're on YouTube.
Give it a share.
Yes.
If you think it's useful to somebody that you know today. But yes, thank you for listening to Lipstick Leader. I've got it all back to front, haven't I? Lipstick Laughs. A quick time for a quick laugh.
And of course, leadership.
Yes. We'll see you next time.
Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to Lipstick, Laughs and Leadership.
If something in today's conversation resonated, take a moment to sit with it, or share this episode with someone who might need to hear it too.
You can subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and that really helps more women find these conversations.
We're glad you spent this time with us, and we hope you're leaving feeling a little more grounded, a little more confident, and a little less alone.
So we'll meet you back on the sofa next time.